Okay, so welcome. I'm very excited today. We have George Dinwiddie coming to talk to us, and I always enjoy talking to George, so I'm grateful that he agreed to come talk to us about estimates. So your manager asks you for an estimate, and I bet all of us have probably been in that position before. Just quick, few announcements. What's coming up next week? We've got a new Agile animated cartoon we will be unleashing on the world, and so we'll be looking at that and then talking through the Agile principle number 8, sustainable development, which is something that's important. Maybe doesn't get as much attention in the Agile space as maybe it should for how important it is. But that's on the 4th. And then on the 11th, we've got Alex Bird. He's a friend of mine, and he's going to be talking about how do you become an expert when you're on the clock. So he's going to be just talking about developing expertise. So that's going to be exciting to hear. And then we'll have something else in between there. And then on the 25th, we've got Mike Clement, who's coming to talk about focus on flow, lean principles in action. And this was when I did that poll earlier, one of the big things that you guys said you were interested in was the lean. That was one of the top things people wanted to hear more about. So he'll be talking about that. And then the other thing I want to let you know about is in April, I'm doing a class on improve your agile skills with key ideas from these 5 books. Doing it through Maven. It's paid class. And we'll be going through once a week, taking a book, listening to the summary of it. If you want to read the book, that's great too. But if you're really, really busy, you'll still get a lot out of it just by listening to the summary, and then talking through what that means in our particular situation. And these summaries of these books were kind of designed on the idea that if you come to a book summary or come to a book with the idea of a problem you're trying to solve, and then go through and have discussions with people, you can get a lot of improvement in a very short amount of time just kind of by following that process. So that's what we're going to be doing. We're going through these 5 books. I will throw the link in here in case you're interested. Um, we're just starting to launch this. If you are interested, I'm getting ready to launch just the regular early bird discount on it. If you haven't got that yet and you're interested in signing up, just ping me and I'll make sure that I get you that early bird thing, because I'll start launching that next week. Anyway, this is coming. You might take a look at that and see if that looks interesting. If you type your name in it, you will get updates as things go as well. So that's what I've got. Let me stop here now and we will turn it over to George. And George, thank you so much for coming. Can't wait to hear what you've got to say. Okay, I may have accidentally muted you when I muted everybody else, so you may have to unmute. Sorry.
There we go.
There we go.
And I'm looking for where the share button went again.
Did it disappear on us?
It did.
Okay,
There
well,
it is.
bear with.
I
You got it?
found
Okay. WebEx likes to play pranks on George and randomly move things around on the screen, it seems like.
Okay. So, so how do you feel when your manager asks you for an estimate? Well, let me back up for a minute. Before we go to that, let me tell you a little bit about who I am. Because you probably all came here because you expect good things from Mark's Lunch and Learns. And so I'm an old timer, 40 years in hardware and software development, and then coaching, and I'm semi-retired now. I'm not doing the traveling consultant thing since the start of COVID. And I authored a book on estimation, which came out just about the start of COVID. And so a lot of people didn't hear about it. I was supposed to give a keynote at a conference on the topic, and the conference was canceled. It was a very poor time to come out with a book. But I like to talk with people, and I like to help people. And so one of the ground rules here is feel free to ask questions in the chat at any point. And so I like to connect with the people in the audience. So let's start with a doing a word cloud on how does it make you feel when you're asked for an estimate. You've probably been through this before, and you can remember how you felt at the time.
And there's a link in the chat to the Slido, but you should also see it in the it should also pop up in the side pane. So can you see those, George?
I can't see the Slido output.
Okay, so it looks like the three biggest ones are excited, nervous, and unsure. And the excited, I don't know what's wrong with this group because I've never had that experience, at least not in a positive sense. So that's great. And then other big things are uncertainty, scared, dread, worried, a not smiley or frowny face, just like straight across like that. Oh, and then the one I really like here is wondering how this estimate is going to be used.
And that's a very good question. So, but estimation is easy, right? You just slice your project into a whole bunch of story cards and put a number on each one. Is that the way you do it? So I wish I could see everybody, but I seem to have lost the video.
I think we've got just a few people with their video on.
Okay. So, you know, that doing a user story estimation on story cards kind of comes from early in the XP world, and seems to have worked very well in that context, but it's not necessarily good for all contexts. So let's go to the next Slido poll. How many stories do you estimate at once, especially at the beginning of a project?
Okay, so I put the poll out there. I'm gonna put the link in again just in case anybody recently joined, so you can get to that. It looks like right now less than 10 has 55%, but we do have 5% on dozens and hundreds. But it looks like we're tending toward the less than 10, and then we've got 19% at 10 to 23, and then dozens at 10%, and hundreds is down to 2% now.
Okay, so you can see, you can imagine that the smaller numbers are a whole lot less work and tend to work better, but they don't let you plan nearly as far out into the future. And sometimes you need to look further down the road. One problem with trying to take a whole project and slice it up into story size is that the sunk cost of doing that makes the plans really rigid. Once you've developed all these story cards, then you kind of hate to go through them all again and change them all. I've worked with clients where they said, "Oh, well, we can't change the stories now because this backlog has been approved by senior leadership." And so you're kind of locked in. And as you work, you discover things. And if one of the things you discover is that, oh, this story doesn't really need to be done, but we need to do these other 3 stories instead, well, then you've got a change management problem that can get in the way of actually getting the work done. So small stories are good for developing, but not so good for long-term planning. Using story cards is works pretty well for your next sprint, your next 2 weeks or less. But if you're doing a big project that you expect to take a year or so, you don't really want to go to that level. And so bigger stories, sometimes called epics, features, or capabilities, are better for planning the big picture and long term, but they they tend to, you're planning in less detail then. So one important thing, and somebody mentioned this in the word cloud, is what question are you asking? How's this going to be used? I've seen many organizations that estimate out of habit or tradition. This is just the way we do things, and they don't remember why they originally started doing it that way. But what is the question or decision that depends on this estimate? Because here's three possibilities. Can we guarantee delivery by this date? Or about how long will this take? And what's the quickest we could deploy a version of this? So for these three questions, you might want a pessimistic estimate for the first one, a nominal estimate for the second one, and an optimistic estimate for the third one. Or there might be something else entirely. There may be some other question that's being asked. And so understanding how the estimate will be used helps you estimate to fit that need. And so in your projects, do you know what the question is? And does your manager know what the question is? Sometimes these requests for estimates are handed down from somewhere, who knows where. But can you even ask your manager, what this estimate is going to be used for? What's your relationship with your manager? Can you ask the questions? And this could be, if the manager doesn't know, this could be a tricky question to ask. If you ask them, will they tell you openly? If they didn't know, would they tell you? You don't know, this is where it starts getting really tricky in the people issues. And even if they're trying to communicate clearly with you, they may not be very good at expressing their needs. So these people issues, this is really the reason I wrote the book, because I see so many people and teams and organizations, get all wrapped around the axle on the subject of estimation, and sometimes they start treating each other badly. And so, my hope was that the book would help people get along better around the subject of estimation. And then what happens when the estimate is wrong? So let's do another word cloud here.
Okay, sorry, took me just a second there. So what happens when the estimate is wrong? I think Tom just put in the chat the ever popular throat to choke, and that may be maybe some experience here.
Yeah, that was one of Ken Schwaber's comments about the role of the product owner, I believe, in early Scrum days. Is the single throat to choke. It always kind of bothered me a bit.
That particular comment sounds bad. I think the idea of it being in the product owner who, as you go, can decide what to pull out, I think puts
Right.
the responsibility, if they actually have authority to do that, it puts the responsibility in the right place, because you've got somebody that's making the decision of, if If we're not getting as fast as we want, are we working on the most important thing? And so that, in that sense, I think it's good to kind of have that in the mindset that it's somebody that can actually has the authority to decide what not to do. Okay, let's see where we're at. Looks like shame, blame, and lots of meetings. When the estimate's wrong, lots of meetings. That sounds that sounds about right. Frustration. You should be learning from it. Scope. Nothing happens. Repoint. Reevaluate the story. Lack of trust. Upset stakeholders. And chaos.
Okay, so I think some people have had experience with estimates being wrong before. And and one of the issues that happens a lot is if the estimate is treated as a plan, then just by taking the estimate, then the plan doesn't take into account risks and contingencies. So it's pretty brittle in the face of being wrong. And if the estimate is treated as a commitment, then the assumptions underlying the estimate become invisible because it's hidden behind this all or nothing commitment. And so a lot of these words indicate that one or both of these things are true. But I like to say that one thing you know about an estimate that right from the beginning is that it's wrong. It's an estimate. So it's bound to be wrong. You just don't know how much and in what direction. So would you rather the project come in earlier than estimated or later? Or sometimes you're expected to precisely meet a date, but would it be okay to deliver early? Or would you have to just kind of twiddle your thumbs and wait for the time to run out? Are you looking for the minimum possible time given your circumstances? Perhaps for judging feasibility, or you have a very optimistic manager? If you're trying to if you're trying to come up with a minimum viable product, then you might want to look for what's the minimum possible time for this set of features for a minimum viable product, so that you can judge which set of features is likely to be able to be released early, the soonest, and so to decide which direction to go. But there's no in between early and late. You cannot expect to estimate right on the money. It's an estimate. It's not a calculation. And once you get used to that fact, things become a bit easier. Now, I one time was brought in to consult with a company, a large multinational, and I went to the site and met with manager on a project. And he told me that his annual review was based on his ability to estimate the cost in time plus or minus 3%. But he didn't yet know the requirements for what he was going to be building. And he didn't even know who was going to be doing the work. He thought probably some teams in Eastern Europe that had worked with him before, but he wasn't sure. But he was being asked for the estimate without that information. Now, to me, that's not good management. That's really just sick. He was going to be judged based on how well he could guess. And I told him, well, there is one way to deal with that in an agile process. And that's just way overestimate and then, and then kill time until you get there. But that's not real good business. So in a more relaxed atmosphere, it could err on either side. When choosing how much to fit into the next sprint, then it's okay to choose too much. If you limit work in progress, then okay, you reach the end of the sprint, you've got some cards left over. That's okay. Things, that particular sprint got less done than you expected. Or if you run out of planned work, you can find something useful to do. You could go pull in the next card, or there may be some deferred work that really needs to be done, some cleanup, and this gives you an opportunity to do it. But either way, this gives you information that you can use to adjust how much to choose for the next sprint. Now, I have seen teams that even though they didn't, they estimated how much they could get done, and then they didn't get that much done. Then the next sprint, they still estimated they could get that amount done. Same number of story points. And did this over and over and over again without ever adjusting based on the reality that they saw. So, so it's important to, let me go back to that. So one of the advantages of estimating, it's kind of like calling your shots in billiards. It lets you know when what you've made an error. Now, when I played pool in college, I was just happy if a ball went into any pocket. I was a terrible player. But the people who could play well, they got that way by calling their shots. And then if they accidentally, made a ball that they didn't expect, they didn't count that as a win like I did. They figured out, well, what did I do wrong here in lining up this shot? So then there's the question of how do you estimate? And in my experience, estimation is mostly about comparison. Fundamentally, it comes down to comparing between, what you know about the expected work to what you know about other work. Maybe work you've done in the past, maybe work that other people have done in the past. Now, sometimes people try to come up with a formula to do this comparison. So they come up with a formula that represents the expected amount of time for work measured in a particular way, maybe function points or something. And that's just a way of abstracting the comparison. Now, I've seen people come up with formulas, and but then never check whether that formula really worked, was accurate for the work that they were doing, and that can lead you down a sad path also. But if you say, oh, well, this part of this project, this feature seems somewhat similar to what we did on last year's project. Can you say maybe this feature is no more work than that work was? So, or that it was about the same as that work. Or maybe you say, well, this work is at least as much work as that work. Maybe you can even make some judgments about, with a little more detail. Maybe say, well, this is going to be twice as hard as that was. And so when you're doing the comparison, there's a lot to consider. You want to consider the aspects of the system, which is what programmers tend to think about. What we're building. But we also want to consider the system context. What's around the part that we're building, and the development context. What's around us while we're building it. So, we think about the system functionality, but what about security threats? What about load expectations? What about accessibility or the difficulty of interfacing with other systems? And then there's the congeniality and communications of the people for whom we're building the system. If you've got a product owner who's only in the office, once a month, that's going to end up slowing you down. If they're not quick at making decisions, that's going to slow you down. I once had a business analyst who was acting as a product owner proxy say, oh, the business here is pretty good. They usually get back to me in a few days. They obviously had very different expectations for timeliness than I did. So another question is, have you paid attention to the rate of past work? Now, personally, I'm a bit like the Mad Hatter, and I've become oblivious to time. I get involved in what I'm doing, and I'm not paying attention at the time to how long it's taking me to do it. I'm paying attention to what I'm doing. And well, to use a metaphor, when I'm judging how long it takes me to drive somewhere, I often time it from the start, when I start my car, to when I stop at the destination. Now, this is the sort of estimate that your GPS will give you. But then I came to realize that I really should time it from when I decide to leave and I have to gather my stuff and go out to my car to when I get inside at the destination. You know, I've gotten there, I've found a parking place, I've walked to the door and gone in. Because it's easy to consistently overlook some of the time spent. I was working for a company once, and they really prided themselves on their ability to estimate contracts. But there was one contract I wasn't on, but that went on while I was there, where they got the software done in time, but they had completely overlooked the fact that they needed to convert the client's old data to new formats so that this software could use it. And that turned out to be an expensive mistake because they had given a fixed price contract. So if you haven't been paying close attention to the rate of past work, you know, you can run on your gut, but perhaps there are some records that can help you calibrate that. So you could look at your code repository and look at the check-in dates to see how long different things happen. Heard of people looking at the time card charges, you know, how many hours were charged to a project, and maybe even how many over time, because that changes from time period to time period. But watch out there. I've heard tales of this happen, you know, people going back and looking at how long a previous project took. And it wasn't until they got into their project, well after they had estimated it, that they found out that the project that they used as a reference point was not allowed to charge any overtime. But you know, so it had had a whole lot of overtime that was not recorded in time cards. So by using that as a you know, that to estimate, to set expectations, then they set themselves up for a death march right from the start. So, and often the question being asked is not a when will this be finished? It's will this be finished in time to ship by the promised date? A lot of times there's a date in mind before you even hear of the project. And so finish there means, can we deliver a reasonably finished looking product that can be happily used? And that may mean throwing some stuff out to make it fit. But there's only three answers to that question. It's either no problem, we'll easily make this deadline, or no way, we can't get close to it. You know, this is just way too much work. We need to replan this, or it's too close to tell. And then as you're going through the project, time is passing. You can track how much time has passed, but how do you track your progress? That can be hard to do. Counting stories or story points really tells us that we're spending effort. So one of the things that estimation can do for us is we can estimate some intermediate milestones along the way. And those milestones indicate progress. And if we haven't reached a milestone by the time we expected to, then maybe maybe we're running slow and we need to think about it. So these intermediate milestones, if we estimate them, and this can just be nominal estimates because they're really just for internal use. And but they give you some situational awareness of how things are going. If you're running, it looks like you're running way ahead, oh, no problem. If looks like we're running way late, then we better start looking at some alternative plans. Maybe we can cut some scope. And in between, still have to keep a close eye on things because it's too close to tell. And then when those estimates are wrong, in the middle of a project, we need to think about how we handle it. So let's do another multiple choice survey here. What do you do if you miss a planned milestone?
Okay, and the options here are work faster to catch up, skip some work like testing, don't say anything, don't let anyone know, or replan based on your current information. Now, George, are you wanting to know what they actually do or what they think the right thing is to do? Because those may not be the same answer.
That's a good point. I guess I should have done two versions of this multiple choice.
What do you do? What do you think you should do? Okay, well, we're looking at 72% of us say we replan based on current information. 6% say that in their organization, they just don't say anything. 3% say skip some work like testing. Which that seems artificially low to me, having worked with a lot of organizations. So either this is like we've got the cream of the crop organizations here, and work faster to catch up is at 20%. And Ian says a combination of all the above.
Well, and one thing about asking this question in this group, then these are, the larger organization around you may prevent you from taking the action that you would prefer, and may kind of push you into some choices. And there are probably some worse choices than these also. Replanning
like
based on
outright lying, is that one of the bad choices?
Yeah, well, if you're trying not to say anything and somebody forces you to say something, then perhaps that seems like your best of available options.
Yeah.
Not necessarily for the project, but maybe so that you can find a different job before it hits the fan. I like that one. We could probably cut scope, but it wouldn't be testing. Yeah, that's testing. I think is a false saving. I've certainly seen that get out of hand very quickly. But the thing is this gives you feedback on the way your project is running, and that can be very handy. I've I was once consulting with an organization, and they were going to miss a delivery date, an expected delivery date that they were going to show to someone else important within the organization. And the CIO had a meeting of the various team leads and such, and he was a little unhappy. He says, I bet there was somebody who knew that this was late before last week. Why didn't I hear about it? And the thing is someone who's in charge of a project, even at a high level, even if the news is bad, they would rather hear it in a timely fashion than not. They may still yell at you and blame you, but they would really not, they don't like being caught off guard at the very end. Even if that's, if their behavior encourages that. So when when you find yourself behind schedule, first take care of the immediate problems. Maybe what happened is that something you thought was working turned out to be giving the wrong answers in some unexpected circumstances. When you tried it out with another real system rather than your test data, you found, oh, this isn't as finished as we thought it was. I've seen that a lot. Maybe some of your plans, are harder to do than you thought. Maybe we're going to set a time by dragging an image of hands of a clock around, and that turned out to be hard to do. Or for that, you were going to use some fancy JavaScript framework that nobody had used before, and it turned out to be hard to learn. So you uncover assumptions that you made that are incorrect. This is the thing about estimates. They're built on their assumptions. They're built on an assumption that oh, this work is going to be roughly similar to the work we've done in the past, or that we've got this tool that's going to help us a lot, and maybe it's not as helpful as we thought. So, and how many people, were working on a project at the beginning of 2020 and had a contingency plan in their project plan for a pandemic? Anybody? So in conclusion, don't bet it all on precise estimates. Accurate estimates are good, but I've never seen anybody get both accuracy and precision at the same time. So you need to allow some slop. Estimates should be roughly right, based, and in the direction that's important to you. So plan for them to be wrong, and use estimates to test your assumptions.
Hey, George, we've got something that's got a question here.
Okay.
The initials HS. I'm not sure what their name is. Did you want to go ahead and ask that?
Go by,
Okay.
Hey, good afternoon. I go by HS. I have a question. I work in a data warehouse application, which is more like a back end, and we don't have any front end, and we rely on a lot of other cross-functional squads for, like, we're dependent on them providing us with the data on right at the right time, right? So I often kind of get underestimating sometime, because since we rely on them, and not every sprint is same in terms of, sometime they're able to help right away. Sometime, they could be encountering some issues in their application also, because in Agile environment, we work, let's say we're developing some reports based on the functionality that they develop, right? So when it comes to estimating in a cross-functional squad setting, is there a different approach? Because because there are things that I'm not even aware of what's going on their side, right? So is there any way that I wouldn't have to estimate wrong, too many times? Maybe I can minimize the error in estimation when it comes to estimating in the cross-functional squad setting.
So in effect, you're estimating the work of both your team and another team together.
Yeah, because my work depends on them, because I'll have to wait for them entering some data in the system, and then that comes to our system, right? So
yeah. Well, and one of the things is, do you have past experience with the team working on the other system to know how reliable their estimates are? Because your estimate is building on theirs.
Yes, it's kind of it's unpredictable. That's the challenge.
Right.
That some sprints it's smooth. We get the help, um, when we need, but then sometime there are situations that um, we could still be waiting for data, and it could be the last of the sprint also. So yeah, that's the situation. So is there any way that I could plan differently or estimate differently?
Well, I would certainly plan differently.
And
I would certainly plan differently because you want to have some, what's your contingency plan if they don't, they say they're going to be able to deliver this data, at such and such a time. And what's your contingency plan if they haven't done that? If they find that they can't meet that date?
yeah, we won't be able to perform testing if they cannot.
Yeah, so or maybe not complete testing. You might be able to create some data artificially and test with that, but not test with the live output from somebody else's system. Now that makes some assumptions that you created the test data correctly, and a lot can go wrong there. Ultimately, you can't estimate things that are unpredictable. It's really more of a target then. Well, this is what we think might happen. This is the nominal, and you're not going to be bothered if they deliver early. But the delays being what they are, it's more likely that things will come in late than that they'll come in early, more often, more frequently. Now, one thing I saw, I was working with a team one time that they were learning how to work in an agile fashion, but the data that they needed was coming from a team working in a waterfall fashion. And they had, the system that they were delivering for testing kept failing. They several times. And so finally, one of the engineers went down to their team area and sat down with a programmer there and paired with them to get that working. Part of it was misunderstanding of what was needed, but that sped up the the feedback cycle, and they got it done fairly quickly. And then, about a month later, then there was a similar problem. And that time, the engineer working on this down in the other area came up to the Agile team's team room and worked there with them because he says, I like working this way a whole lot better. And they got it done pretty quickly. And in fact, I don't think managers even knew that they had this delivery problem. But yeah, the point is estimates don't avoid problems for you. What estimates do is help you notice things earlier so that you can do something about things.
Yeah, I think the one problem is we both follow the Agile methodology, and their system is also evolving, and then even they wouldn't know what problem they will be encountering, right? And then,
Right.
And while I'm expecting data, they could be dealing with their problem. So I think that's the dependency, because of the dependency as well. And then, so it's not like waterfall where they have their full application tested and it works for them, because they could be developing a piece of functionality and they send the data coming from that piece of functionality to us. But while they're still, their application is not yet stable. And then, I think that's also one kind of disadvantage I see working on a backend application where you would expect data from other application, which is also evolving, right? Which would ask, which would cause some estimation to go off, I guess, because of that as well.
And they may, they may have multiple competing goals, that, and so they may not realize that they're slowing you down. Communication is so important between teams. And if you can build good communication patterns, and part of that is, showing your plan, showing your estimates and your dependencies and what your expectations are of each other. And when something looks like it's not going well, then to work together to solve the problem, because it's not really one person's problem or the others, one team's or the others. It's really, it's a shared problem. Does that make sense?
It does. It does.
Yeah. There's no real magic. Now, so Bob Payne and I were working with a client one time, and he brought in, and there were, lots of different teams contributing to one overall system. And he brought in an idea that he'd come up with somewhere else, called a portfolio alignment wall. And so, we put up cards for features or capabilities, and each team put them up based on when they thought they were going to deliver. And then I brought in some red yarn, and we put these up on a cork board. And so then we put red yarn, between the things that had dependencies, so that you could see, if this slips, that's going to affect this other program too. And we did that, and I think it was a weekly or every other week meeting. So a representative from each of those teams, plus some of the next level of management, would get into a room in front of this wall and talk about how things were going and what they were worried about. And that communication made things work much more smoothly.
Okay, communication.
I think you can find some articles on the portfolio alignment wall on the Lightspeed website.
Yeah, thank you.
Good questions.
I see a question here about the confidence levels. Personally, I find that people are not really good at estimating likelihood of things to any sort of precision. Yes, it's a good thing to do. If you're good at it, by all means do it. But the probability math is a lot harder for people that it seems like it should be. It's just numbers, but you get into probability clouds, and you don't really know the shape of the probability function, in something like this. Being able to say, I'm pretty confident about this, or, I really doubt this, are pretty useful. But they're not going to let you, calculate with that level of probability understanding.
I'll turn on.
Hey, George, do you want to go ahead and, okay, never mind.
Yeah, I just saw you put the stuff in the newsletter. So feel free to reach out to me, email or website. I don't put as much on my blog these days. I've been doing a newsletter instead, which is on the ideacomputing.com website. And then the book on software estimation without guessing is on Pragmatic Programmers website. they sell the ebook. They don't, they have distribution of paper books through other channels, so you can find it on Amazon or bookstore can get it. But I asked them if it was possible to get a sale coupon for a single book, and they said, "Oh yeah, we can do that." So they gave me this good to the end of the month for 35% off for the ebook.
Cool.
They can't really control the prices through other outlets.
So we've got the links there. George, do you want to go ahead and do the questions, and because we're going to give away a copy to a lucky winner, right?
Sure. And yeah, the book should be available via Amazon Kindle. I haven't checked Amazon's site in a while, but
I just posted the link to it, so it should be up there now.
okay.
Okay, so let's I'll tell you what, I'm going to share so we can get this big on the screen because I'm not sure if people will be able to see it otherwise. Let me do that.
Okay.
Okay.
If I quit sharing now, everything goes back again.
Okay, can you see people are signing up for the link there. Let me get and I need to set it up so I can move through it. Maybe I can move through. Oh, I can move through here. Okay, perfect. Okay, so go ahead and join, and we will see if I can give you the link one more time. Oops, hopefully I didn't give away the answers there. Okay, let me post this in the chat one more time, and we'll get started here. Okay, we'll give you 2 more seconds to join. 1,000. 2, 1,000. Okay. Oh, still got people joining. All right. Got. And the winner will be sent a physical copy of the book unless you prefer the ebook. So it'll be your choice, but I'll mail you one as long as you're in a country where I can get it to you. Okay, so we'll get started right now. Okay, so what is the one thing you know about your estimate? Is it takes too long to make, your manager will ask you to change it, it's wrong, it's not precise enough, or no one will pay attention to it? So based on what George said, what's the one thing you know about your estimate? And 1 second remaining. Okay, it looks like the 2 top choices were it's wrong or it's not precise enough. And it looks like George's answer is it's wrong. And I remember him saying that. What do you think, George? What's about it not being precise enough? I guess if you know it's wrong, it doesn't matter how precise it is.
Yeah, and I find that accuracy is more important than precision. Precision often, trying to get it more precise often leads to it being less accurate.
Okay, cool. Okay, what is important about a good estimate? It informs decision making. It's both accurate and precise. It's closer to the eventual actuality than anyone else's, or it gives you some room for unexpected events, or it's expressed in a range. And let's see. So it informs decision making. 63% got that. 17% said that it gives you some room for unexpected events.
Yeah, on that, I would say that's what your plan should do. Your plan is based on your estimates, but then adds room for unexpected events or alternatives in case things don't go the way you'd like.
Okay. Cool. Okay, what should you do when you discover your estimate is going to be wrong? Blame the workers for not meeting the estimate. Blame the estimate for leading you astray. Institute mandatory overtime to catch up. Bring your resume up to date and contact some old colleagues, or determine what assumptions you made that turned out to be incorrect. Let's see, 2 seconds remaining. Oops. And
Oh, look at that.
Wow, 100%. Man, you're better at explaining things than I am, evidently. I don't think I ever have something good 100%. Determine what assumptions you made that turned out to be incorrect. Oops, I guess I copied that wrong thing. So what is the question here? This is my fault for doing this wrong, I guess.
Let's see here. Where did I?
Well, it may just be a random answer. Sorry about that. I evidently got this wrong. And evidently the correct answer was, well, this will be like Jeopardy. What's question? The decision that depends on the estimate. So what was our question probably?
So,
Oh, I think it was what's the thing we want to ask when making an estimate, and we want to know what decision it is that depends on that estimate.
okay.
I think was the thing. And sorry, I gave you the wrong question, but hopefully that keeps it mixed up a little bit. So add some randomness. What is the difference between estimates and plans? Workers estimate and the manager plans. Plans are built on estimates and consider contingencies. Plans specify who will do what and when. Estimates are guesses and plans are engineered. No one ever got fired for incorrect plans. Okay. And yeah, plans are built on estimates and consider contingencies. So let's see. I hope we got a leaderboard on this. There's our leaderboard. Okay, we've got Jeff O in the top spot by quite a few seconds there. So that's are these all? Yeah. Okay. So Jeff O's got the top spot. So Jeff, you send me your address and whether you want the ebook version or the physical version, and we will get it headed your way. So thank you everybody for participating in that. I'm going to stop the streaming here, and then George, I don't know if you want to stick around if people have questions, but I know other people are going to have to get back to work for stuff. But George, thank you so much for coming, and